We're like, it's the Wienermobile.
And finally be able to bring our hot dogs to the people of Whittier.
We really love the new taste.
No artificial preservatives in our meat, no added nitrates or nitrites in every single one of our hot dogs. Who else has done that? Just Oscar Mayer.
That's awesome.
No more fish for me.
Thanks for tuning in once again to episode 3 of Deconstructing The Trend, your source for uncensored food industry analysis. In focus this time, the benevolent American dietary staple, the hot dog. According to the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council, Americans consume $2.4 billion worth of hot dogs every year. And each year, on the 4th of July, when jingoism and patriotism intermingle, Americans consume 150 million hot dogs. Let's take a look at some of the brilliant minds behind the construction of these sacred tubes of meat.
My name is Tim Snow. I've been a meat scientist at Oscar Mayer for 15 years.
Oh, that's hot.
Ha! Don't laugh. Seriously, don't laugh at Oscar Mayer's meat scientist. This is the backbone of a legitimate business interest. They even have their own prestigious journal called Meat Science. How else would they tap into the advances in natural and organic curing processes? They've got to keep up with the times, using natural ingredients to meet consumer demand and regulatory requirements for, quote, natural and organic processed meats. The irony here is that just back in 2014, Oscar Mayer was publishing videos with their meat scientists bragging about the tradition involved in creating processed meats, and how not much has changed since Oscar Mayer started making salami.
Cool thing that I learned when I got to Oscar Mayer was all the tradition.
Not much has changed since Oscar Mayer started making hard salami many years ago. The only thing that we've done with this piece of meat is we've taken the bone out. The bone goes right there in the middle. So this is the unique blend that we use. Smells like we're making sausage.
My, how the narrative has changed. Fast forward to 2017, and they've shifted away from trying to market tradition.
We removed the added nitrates and nitrites, waited goodbye to byproducts, and got rid of the artificial preservatives in all of our meat. Every single one. For every single one of you. What else would you expect from Oscar Mayer? We eat, sleep, and even drive hot dogs.
As more and more Americans become increasingly conscious about their food choices, the public image of processed meat such as hot dogs has gotten dragged through the mud the past couple years. I guess mystery meat in a tube full of carcinogens is just not really in style anymore. People are rightfully starting to become concerned about predictable health outcomes. As a result, the industry is trying to revitalize public perception of hot dogs with ad campaigns like the one you just saw. They're happy to tell you how they've gotten rid of all added nitrates and nitrites and byproducts and preservatives. But this deceptive advertising song and dance is nothing more than a marginal attempt to regain a fraction of their fleeing customer base. Reading from Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, on the topic of nitrites. Nitrites are added to cured meat as a color fixative, and to help prevent the growth of botulism, a rare but serious paralytic illness. Uncured bacon and other processed meats are starting to appear on the shelves with the label, no nitrites or nitrates added, but study the fine print and you may see a little footnote that reads something like, except those naturally occurring in celery juice. Vegetables do contain nitrates that can be fermented into nitrites, so adding fermented celery juice to bacon is just a sneaky way of adding nitrites. And he goes on to say, nitrates only become harmful when they turn into nitrosamines and nitrosamides. For them to do that, amines and amides must be present, and amines and amides are found in abundance in animal products. The fine print on this ad reads, quote, except for those naturally occurring in celery juice, unquote. It's so small and on screen for such a short time, you can't even see it unless you freeze frame and zoom in. This deceptive, hidden nitrite celery juice rollout across Oscar Mayer's entire hot dog line is exactly the kind of PR tactic you would expect. But nitrites alone are not the only thing about processed meat, such as hot dogs, that deserve condemnation. Let's expand our scope of understanding. The American Institute for Cancer Research recommends limiting consumption of red meat and outright avoiding processed meats, saying, research on processed meat shows cancer risk starts to increase with even small portions eaten daily. Now, let's not forget that World Health Organization assessment of over 800 studies involving 22 experts from 10 different countries, concluding that small amounts of processed meat increase the risk of colon cancer. And lastly, this analysis of the NIH AARP Diet and Health Study, with over 491,000 participants, suggests that nitrites from animal sources may increase the risk of renal cell carcinoma, also known as kidney cancer. But the meat industry doesn't want you to make these connections. They want you to see their repackaged, facelifted meat tube bundles and think, oh, look, organic hot dogs. I guess they're healthy now. But they don't stop there. They're even going to try to sell you on a facelift of their factory farming methods. You know, factory is such a harsh term. How about we take the name factory farming and rebrand it as animal welfare?
We really want to develop a student that has the ability to go from the boardroom to the barn with little more than a change of clothes. Oscar Mayer wanted to help provide the resources to develop the next generation of professionals in the field. Part of this partnership was focused on expanding our course offerings, so that the students that come out of these classes actually have the ability to apply what they've learned.
Second lecture of animal welfare with Dr. Vogel, I decided I didn't want to be a vet anymore, that I wanted to help out the industry through animal welfare. The ideas that we're doing right now, they're brand new, no one's ever done before, which is kind of fun because you have to prove that it's a good idea, and when you're proving it to them, you're also proving it to yourself that this is actually the best thing for the animals.
Let me just shut the door on this chapter by saying that Oscar Mayer was owned by Big Tobacco and placed under the Kraft Foods brand. Big Tobacco company Philip Morris then changed its name to the Altria Group, and Kraft Foods merged with Heinz. So they're still selling you poison, repackaged as organic, and you are now looking at the industry holdings located at the nexus of Big Tobacco and Big Food.